I just didn't always make the best decisions in high school. This is a big, chunky boy. Hey guys, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. My name is Leslie and I am a mom, a teacher, and a lover of books. Today is going to be day 6 of Bookmas, and it's going to be a little get to know the YouTuber A to Z book tag. I saw a few different people do this, but Belle over on YouTube, so go ahead and check out her video. But without too much talking, because I fear that this one's going to be a long one, let's get right on into the video. Starting off strong with the letter A, says the author that you've read the most books from. And technically, this is actually an author that I don't plan to read any more books from. This is Helen Hart, which is the author of the Steele Brothers saga. She wrote like 30 books in the series. I've read like 17, but they're like little novellas. They're anywhere from like 200 to like 350 pages, something like that. I've read the first 17 and then I was like, girl, these are too short and there are too many books. Let's wrap it up. So I felt like that they were definitely dragging, like, but what do I know? Anyways, so it's definitely Helen Hart, which was the author of the Steele Brothers saga. All right, moving on to letter B. This is going to be the best sequel ever, and I am going to have to go with A Court of Wings and Ruin by Miss Sarah J. Maas. This is the 3rd book in the ACOTAR series, and I personally really loved this one. This is definitely my favorite in the series. I love how plot driven it was versus romance or character driven. And that's really what I love in a romantasy or fantasy romance. I definitely think that this one was way more plot heavy than character driven, like A Court of Thorns and Roses and A Court of Mist and Fury. Definitely A Court of Wings and Ruin. This is my Acrylics hardcover edition, and she is stunning. I love this one. Best sequel ever. Letter C is for currently reading, and right now I am currently reading Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. I'm about 33% of the way through it. I really, really like it so far. It's nothing like anything I've ever read before, and I'm curious to see if the Beartown trilogy is written similar to this one or if it's different. I really wanted to read this one first because there is the Netflix series about it. So if you've seen the Netflix series, let me know if it's worth my time, because I don't know how I feel about book to TV show adaptations. So I would love to know what you think. Letter D is the drink of choice while reading. And my go-to favorite drink of all time is definitely Dr. Pepper. We love a Dr. Pepper while we're just existing, breathing, needing a beverage. But I also, in the wintertime, love an iced Golden Eagle chai from Dutch Bros with white chocolate inside. And I also, in the summer, like a Palm Beach iced green tea from Dutch in the summertime. So I love a chai tea in winter, green tea in summer, or my Dr. Pepper just like year-round. Letter E is for e-reader or physical book. This one, I definitely prefer my Kindle. I do have the Kindle Color Soft. The stickers I got off of Amazon, but I definitely prefer to read on my Kindle than a physical book. And let me explain why. So I love the feel of a physical book in my hand, but with my Kindle, I can set goals for myself way easier, so I read a lot faster. I'm not saying like my reading speed is faster, but the rate at which I finish books is definitely faster. When I'm reading on my Kindle, I'll be like, okay, I want to get to 25% of the way through the book today. I want to get through 33% of the way through the book today. And I like don't stop until I reach that goal. Whereas with a book, basically I just read until my thumb starts cramping, and that's that. However, I only read Kindle Unlimited books on my Kindle, or if the books are like massive. So like when I went to read A Court of Silver Flames, I downloaded it on my Kindle because I didn't want to hold the heavy book. So I got it on my Kindle. But other than like big books, I only read Kindle Unlimited on here because I prefer to have the physical books displayed. I prefer Kindle, but I still read physical books too. The next letter is F, and this is a fictional man that I would have dated in high school. And this one is actually so funny, I think. So I chose Mr. Cade Eaton from Heartless by Elsie Silver because he is a grumpy grump single dad who is like a little bit older than her. And one of my exes in high school, not like young high school, but like I was 18, I was a senior in high school, and I had a full-time job at the time, and I started dating one of my coworkers who was a grumpy grump, slightly older than me, and had a 5-year-old son, single dad. So basically, Cade Eaton was like a better cowboy version of the man that I dated, and we're just going to replace the man that I dated with Mr. Cade Eaton. You know, I just didn't always make the best decisions in high school. Moving on. Letter G is glad you gave this book a chance. And that for me is definitely A Court of Silver Flames. Let me explain. So I do not like Nesta, and I really didn't know if I was going to continue the series after A Court of Frost and Starlight because I didn't want to let go of Rhys and Feyre. I decided to give it a go anyways, and I'm really happy I did, just for the fact that now I will be able to continue the series because I do think that I like where the series is going to go, but this was still not my favorite book. The book for me didn't get good until like at least the 50 to 60% mark. And this is a big chunky boy to go that long with me just being like, these two characters are making the worst decisions ever. Yeah, so I'm glad that I gave it a chance. I'm glad that I read it. I'm glad that I can continue the series. H is a hidden gem book, and technically I'm not sure if this is a hidden gem or not. I do think that it's popular on Book Talk, but I just don't watch people that share this book. But when I was researching, I do think that it's considered a Book Talk book. But That's Not My Name by Megan Lawley. I loved this thriller so much. It was so good. I don't even know if it's a thriller or like a mystery, but it was so good. I read it in a day, which I am a mom, a teacher, and I don't ever read books in one day, but I stayed up so late in order to read that book, and I couldn't put it down until it was done. That is about a girl who goes missing, and her boyfriend is accused of doing something to her. And so he is trying to clear his name in his chapter point of views. And then you also have a girl who went missing, and a sheriff finds her, picks her up. She's beaten and bruised and can't remember a thing. So it has the amnesia trope. And basically you're just following her as she gets reunited with her father. And the story kind of goes from there. So That's Not My Name by Megan Lawley. If you haven't read it, you need to read it. It is so good. I rated it 5 stars. One of the easiest 5 stars I've given all year. Letter I is an important moment in my reading journey, and I'm going to have to go with Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing definitely rekindled my love for reading as an adult. It reignited my love and passion for fantasy. It showed me that I love a good fantasy romance, and I feel like that it just had everything I needed. It had just enough romance to keep me wanting more. It had just enough fantasy elements so that I didn't need to spend a whole bunch of time focusing on world building. The magic system was so fun, and I loved the found family element. If you haven't read Fourth Wing, you do need to hop on the bandwagon. You do need to read it, and you at least need to make your own opinion about it. J is just finished, and I just finished The Right Move by Liz Tom Ford. I gave this one 4.5 stars. There were just some things that the characters did that I didn't think were completely mature for an adult relationship, but I loved the acts of service man in here. We did have fake dating, close proximity, best friend's brother. We had so many awesome tropes in here, and I loved this book. If you haven't read the Windy City series yet, I highly recommend. A lot of people say that they don't like Mile High. I liked it. It definitely wasn't a 5-star for me. And there were moments where I was like, okay, I see why people are saying that Xander's is a pig. But when you hear his perspective of how things are happening, he's really not. He's just a man that doesn't understand that people have feelings and people have insecurities and you need to be mindful and aware. But Ryan Shea in The Right Move is the biggest silent acts of love man ever. And I love all of the focus on love languages and finding yourself. And I thought that this was beautiful. All right. So K is kind of books you won't read. And I am so sorry to say it, but I'm not going to read a classic. I won't. I don't like the language that's used. I don't like that I have to feel like that I'm trying to study it. I will listen to classics on audiobook, not very often, but every once in a while I will use an Audible credit and I will get like a dramatized version of a classic and I'll listen to a classic, but I will not buy one. I will not pick it up. I think that they're stunning. I understand that they are genuine pieces of literature, but I would rather stick with my non-classic pieces of literature than read a classic. I was going to put nonfiction on here because I am not a nonfiction self-help girly, but right now I am getting my master's class, so I kind of have to read nonfiction books right now because they're like textbooks. So I felt like I couldn't really say that, and I will read a nonfiction book for my job, but if it's just for enjoyment, I also will not pick up a nonfiction book just for enjoyment. So classics and nonfiction, not going to do it. Letter L was for the longest book you've ever read. The longest book that I have ever read is Heartless Sky by the Twisted Sisters, which is Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Valenti. Heartless Sky is book 7 in the Zodiac Academy series, and we have a total of 952 pages. Now, let me just start by saying this book, she's thick. Not much happened until the last 200 pages. We could have cut out so much. It was so much filler, and it was just 753 pages of wasted time, 200 pages of just jaw on the floor, don't know where it could possibly go, don't know how it's going to end, don't know where the series could go from here. But that being said, I did DNF the series, soft DNF-ish, after this book. For the rest of the series, I will only listen to it on audio, and it has to be very selective time because there's no way that I could listen to this with my son in the car. So it'll take me a while to finish Zodiac Academy, but eventually I do want to find out what happens. M is for a major book hangover, and a book that put me in a major book hangover was Onyx Storm. After Onyx Storm, I did try, because I read them all back to back to back in April, I did try to go into ACOTAR, and I read like the first 2-ish chapters of ACOTAR after this, and I was like, no fantasy is going to compare. Put it down, picked up Zodiac Academy. The first few chapters of Zodiac Academy were more interesting than the first few chapters of ACOTAR, but even then I was like, fantasy's not doing it for me. So I still had to put that down, pick up a romance, and just get rid of fantasy for a while because I just kept comparing everything to the magic system and the world and the characters of the Empyrean series, and that just wasn't fair to fantasy books. So I put a hold on fantasy and started reading romance instead because it literally ruined fantasy romance for me for like 2 months. Onyx Storm, major book hangover. It is so hot in my house. N is for the number of bookcases that I own, and here I do have my big Billy bookcase from Ikea in the middle. I have 2 smaller ones on the edges, 2 of like the 3 shelves this size in my classroom for my classroom library, and then I do have another skinny 3 shelves for my son's book. For me personally, I have 1 big one, 2 small ones. I have 3. One book that I've read multiple times, I actually don't have a physical copy of, and I really wish that I did, is Of Poseidon by Anna Banks. This is a book that I have checked out from the library more times than I could count on my fingers. This is a YA book about basically mermaids. They're called Serena, and Emma is on a vacation in Florida, and her friend gets attacked by a shark and dies. That happens in like the first 3 chapters of the book. And then basically we're following Emma as she tries to come back to school in the fall and learn how to adjust with life without her best friend. And she meets Galen, and Galen is super fascinated with her and can't seem to leave her alone, and things escalate from there. I loved that series from like middle school to high school. It was so captivating. I loved the romance. I loved the story. I loved the plot, the magic system, the experiences that they went on. I loved it. P is for my preferred place to read, and I am definitely an in-bed reader girly. My favorite time to read, my most relaxing place to read is in bed with my baby monitor silenced and with my little fluffy chair back pillow right behind me. That is my most relaxed that I pretty much ever am. Q is a quote that gives you all the feels. This says, "I'm holding on to my old life and my old friends with an iron grip. But why? Because it's what I've always known, because they were part of the picture I painted for myself." And I'm not going to give too much backstory, and I don't want to tell you what book that is from, but I will say that hit so hard because I tend to do that. I romanticize my old friendships, my old relationships, and I kind of make myself feel like I need to change myself a little bit to fit into the narrative that old friends and old people want to see me as. But when I had my baby, I definitely changed. It changed me as a person, as it should. And it's hard for me to accept that when it comes to like my old friendships. That one really stuck with me. And then this was another quote that I did, and I printed it on a piece of paper so that you couldn't tell what book it was from. But it does say, "The terrible thing about becoming an adult is being forced to realize that absolutely nobody cares about us. We have to deal with everything ourselves now. We don't have time to think or breathe. We just wake up and start digging through the heap because there will be another one dumped on us tomorrow." And that hit so hard because, again, things are changing and change is really scary for me. I don't like change, and now I have to do everything for myself, everything for my son, and it's difficult. So those are 2 quotes that give me all the feels. R is a reading regret. I regret reading Zodiac Academy. I regret reading book 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and part of 8. I regret putting literal days, full on more than 24 hours into this series when I didn't like it. But this was a book content creator that I kind of put on a pedestal when I was first starting my reading journey because they were popular. So I thought that I needed to read what they were reading. And this was just not good. I didn't hate the first 3, but the first 3 are the ones that everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, it gets so much better after book 3. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. There's so much more filler because, again, we got to 958 pages in that one. This one is just over 500, which for a fantasy, valid. This one didn't seem like it had that much filler, honestly. It felt like that it was good for setting up the world, setting up the magic system, introducing us to the characters. It only had 2 points of view. By the time you get to book 8, I think that you literally have 6 or 7. That's my biggest regret as an educator, is that I just used that in an actual context. Anyways, yes, biggest reading regret was ever picking up this book. S is a series that I've started and needed to finish, and that is the Chestnut Springs series by Elsie Silver. This is the next book that I need to read, which is Reckless. This is Theo and Winter's story, and I'm really excited for Theo and Winter. I've just been putting it off. There are just other things that I want to read more, and I don't know why, because these are Kindle Unlimited books, so I could literally just read them whenever, but it's just like there's always something else, you know? So I liked the first book. I didn't mind the second book. I loved the third book, so I'm curious to see what I thought of this one. I would say it was probably like 3.5 star for Flawless, 3 star for Hopeless, 4.5 for Powerless, and I am excited to see where this one takes me. T is 3 of my favorite books of all time. I kind of tried to do one of each of my 3 favorite genres. So my favorite genre is fantasy, and by far my favorite fantasy that I've read so far is Fourth Wing. I'm a romance reader as well, and right now my favorite romance series, book, whatever you want to call it, is the Mind F series by St. Abbey. This one was so good. This one is following our main character, Lana, who is a serial unaliver, and the FBI profiler who is set to work on her case. And this was so good. It reminded me of like Dexter, the TV show, meets Criminal Minds, had a baby, out popped this wonderful, wonderful series. Now, I would definitely say that the plot and the characters is what I love so much about this, but the author doesn't do a great job of describing what things look like. So it is kind of hard to visualize what's going on if you're not visualizing the characters from those TV shows, if that makes sense. But this one, I highly, highly, highly recommend you read, but if you do, please check the trigger warnings. It does get heavy. It's a series of 5 little novellas. Each of the novellas is available on Kindle Unlimited, but you can buy the full series is one giant book together, and I highly recommend you read it. I could not sing its praise enough. I also have recently been dabbling into mystery, thriller, horror-esque type books, and That's Not My Name by Megan Lally is definitely my favorite thriller, hands down, no questions asked. I just think you should read it. There's nothing else that I can say about that. You is what you are an unapologetic fangirl for, and I am definitely a fangirl for ACOTAR and Fourth Wing, and I buy as much merch as I can. I watch as many videos as I can about them. I would love to, I don't want to say I would love to live in those worlds because I don't think that I would because, you know, war, and I'm 4'10" and tiny and would never be able to survive in a fantasy world. But I would say that I would like to live in a present day world where I could just literally reread over and over and over those 2 series forever. Unapologetically fangirling over ACOTAR and Fourth Wing do not make me choose. V is for very excited for these upcoming releases, and I'm going to talk about like the standalones that I'm excited about, and that is Whidbey by T. Kira Madden. That is coming on March 10th of 2026. Coming April 21st, we have The Caretaker by Marcus Cleaver. We're going to go with that. Sorry if I'm butchering that. But this was a thriller that I read this year called We Used to Live Here, and this was brilliant. It was a mystery thriller with a touch of horror, and I was so interested in this book. I had to go back and make some annotations in it because it was just so smart, and I am so excited to see what this author releases next. A third book that I'm looking forward to. This one comes out on January 20th, so it is coming soon. Be on the lookout. It's called The Future Saints by Ashley Winstead. The cover is gorgeous. Those are 3 of my anticipated standalones that I am excited to read for 2026. W is for my worst bookish habit. I'm going to say 2. So my worst bookish habit is that I can't DNF book. There are so many books that I would say that I should have DNF'd to just save my time because life is too short and I can't. I don't know what it is. I feel so bad to just put down and not even give the time of day to a book that this author put hours and hours of their time into writing that I just feel so so guilty DNFing a book that I have to finish it. But then what are the chances that I'm actually going to meet these authors? I already bought the book. I already supported the author. Why do I need to waste my time reading something that I'm not enjoying? And then it's just like I'm rage reading at that point. Like I literally rage read Zodiac Academy now. Why do I do that to myself? The other bookish habit that I have that I would love to break is that I do not read the backs of books, and I will tell you why. This book right here made me hate reading the blurbs because it ruined part of the book for me. And I'm so sad because I hate when books do that. I want to be surprised. I don't like to know exact details that are going to happen. I want to know like the tropes, but not like the third act tropes. Like I want to know what like the main tropes are. And there are some people that will talk about books and say that they have the cheating trope in it and this and that. But then like the third act conflict was the cheating. And I'm like, why are you doing that? And that's how I felt about this. So I need to start reading the blurbs of books. Those are my two worst bookish habits. Not DNFing books that I'm unhappy with and not reading the blurbs of books just because they're popular books. X is a bit of a scavenger hunt, so I need to start at the top of my bookshelves, which I know you can't see, but then I need to count to the 27th book on my shelf. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. 27 is Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. I have yet to start the Rose Hill series because I haven't finished Chestnut Springs, but this one says that as a chart-topping country singer with a recent streak of bad press, it's hard for Skylar Stone to find any peace, but she finds it in Rose Hill with a little boy and a little girl who steal her heart just as thoroughly as their dad, Weston Belmont. The man is a shameless flirt. He oozes confidence and masculinity in a way that is downright distracting. And in bed, he's addictive. Everything with him is wild and impulsive, and Skylar is desperate to regain some control, but no one has supported her like Wes does, and no one has ever made her feel as loved as he does either. So while Skylar's brain says settling down with the small-town horse trainer is impossible, her heart says she's right where she belongs. Still, her life as a celebrity haunts her. It has a power to pull her and West apart. She can see it in his eyes that he wants her to stay, and she wants that too. But Skylar knows better than anyone that you don't always get what you want. It's giving the Hannah Montana movie. She's a chart-topping country singer. He's a horse trainer. That's what I'm getting from this. Love that. Y says your last bookish purchase, and my last bookish purchase, I actually made one today. So I ordered more of these acrylic bookends that are like arched because I need some more. I also today ordered more of my display ones so that I could display like my Fourth Wing ones better. Those are my most recent book purchases. And last but definitely not least is Z, which is my Snatcher. So this is a book that I stayed up late to read. So I've already talked about these books because they're my favorites, and I already said that I stayed up late to read them. So first is That's Not My Name by Megan Lawley. I stayed up to finish it because I had to know what happened. Also, The Right Move by Liz Tom Ford. With The Right Move, it took me almost a week to finish it, and I don't like stretching out books super long. I like to finish them in like 4 to 5 days or less. I just feel like that the story sticks better, and I usually rate the books higher if I can finish them faster. So I was pushing a little bit late on this one, and I wanted to see what happens so that I could rate it and review it and see how their story ended. And so I stayed up late that night to finish this one. And I stayed up late to finish the Mind F series because this plot was just so good. I had to know what happened next. The chapters were pretty short, so it was easy for me to just be like, one more chapter. When I was reading on my Kindle, I was like, okay, well, I'm already at 66%. I can get to 80% by the end. And then it'd only take like 30 minutes. And then I'd be like, oh, well, I could just finish it. And then suddenly I was up until 3 a.m. reading the Mind F series. And my boyfriend turned over and he was like, girl, are you going to go to sleep? And I was like, let me finish this book first. So definitely the Mind F series by St. Abby kept me up late. those are my get to know the YouTuber book tag for you from A to Z. I would love to see if you guys did this challenge. Tag me in it below. And I wonder what your reading taste is like. Made it all the way to the end of the video. Leave me the A to Z emoji down in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will see you in just a couple days for the next Bookmas video. I hope you have a great rest of your night. Bye, guys.